Hey there, and welcome to Lesson 5, where we're going to be focusing on the core habits and processes that will help you achieve success in your online art business. Remember, there are four essential ingredients that we've been talking about that form the habit loop. They're cues, routines, rewards, and reflection. They're just as important here as they are in any of the other areas, any of the other pillars that we've been talking about. There are 6 big art biz habits that we're going to focus on in just a second, but I want to really briefly here just review quickly what those 5 pillars are and where they are in relationship to each other. So let's take a look here at the pillars again. Remember, the mindset's in the center. When you're creating compelling artwork, you're going to build your online platform. We're taking that one slightly out of order. We're going to do that next. You're going to grow an engaged audience. These are all the things that are going to lead to your ability to launch that artwork. So looking at an overview now of growing an engaged audience, I want to walk through what those items are, what those habits are. There's 6. Making sure that I counted those correctly. There's 6 main habits that I want to make sure that y'all understand and that we are working towards developing. I am assuming right now that you have none of these yet. Some of you may have all of these. That's fantastic. Wherever you are, I want you to be aware of what these are, and we're not going to worry about getting them going until we get to Module 5. But I want you to know what they are before we get there. So this particular lesson is not about starting new stuff. It is about assessing where you are right now and which of these habits are going to be particularly important for achieving your goal that you identified in the last module. So those 6 habits are identifying and knowing your ideal collector, creating a content plan focused on your 4 to 5 value content categories. This is the trick to not having to spend hours and hours and hours and hours going, oh Lord, I need to make a social media post. I better do something really quick. If you build your content plan, build a content plan, you will immediately be further ahead than so many other folks. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. But I get excited talking about it because I think it's one of the things that really slows people down the most is that they don't have a plan. And so they're creating content on the fly and they don't know where they're going with it. So more on that in a minute. Then you're going to share meaningful content on your website. Blogs are not dead. I know people say they are, but they're not. They're really helpful for a whole variety of reasons. Sharing content there is the first place that I recommend sharing it. Secondly, send regular emails. Remember, not a newsletter, but regular weekly emails. You could send one up to 2 times a week if you really get going on your content plan. Do not recommend daily anymore, but 1 to 2 times a week is fantastic. Then fourth, share that meaningful content on social media. The real kicker here, the way that all comes together is that you're going to move people. Your goal is to move people from social media to your website to sign up for your email list so that you can speak to them more directly. One of the biggest errors I see people make is that they put up a website and they sit back and they wait for all the customers to come. And nobody shows up and they're crickets and they get so sad and disappointed. But it's because they haven't done anything to drive traffic. People don't just cruise around that often really looking at websites. They come from somewhere else. They see your work somewhere and then come to your website. You have to bring them there. It's called creating traffic. And we use social media to drive traffic to your website to build your email list. Your email list is the primary place you're going to sell. That's how those 3 pieces of the platform work together. And they're really, really crucial. You need all 3. You can create a minimal viable offer with just email or just a social media platform. You're going to get further faster if you have all three. And if you think that you may need to have just one, we'll talk about that in a coaching call. But I want you to realize you need to hopefully build all three. Then the final part of that, the secret sauce that is the driving force for that traffic, is engagement. You're going to build a relationship with those ideal collectors by responding to comments and questions that come up on your website, on social media, and in replies to your emails. You have to answer back. If you don't, you're not going to build that connection. You're not going to build that relationship, and people are not going to feel comfortable buying from you. You have to build connection. You have to build relationship. All of those things are based on emotion. Emotions develop as you have that relationship and social interaction. So don't be afraid to do that. It really is a crucial part of the whole process. If you send emails and don't reply to emails that people send back, you're going to have a hard time making sales. If you don't respond to comments on your social media post, you're going to have a hard time making sales. So it is super important that you get comfortable doing that. And I'm going to harp on that at least a couple of times in this lesson because it's that important. So let's go through these in a little bit more depth. In particular, I want to talk about the collector a little bit more. So many of you went through the 5-day social media challenge, and some of these terms are familiar. Some of you didn't, and I want to define what they are. Know that you don't have to do the work for this now. It'll come up in module 5, so no panic attacks and no extra work on this one. But you need to know what these terms are as I talk about them and use them. Identifying and knowing your ideal collector comes from actually attracting that ideal collector, from knowing what is important to you. People don't buy paintings just because they like the painting. They buy the painting because they have an emotional connection to the painting and to the artist who made it. So in order to build that connection, you need to attract collectors who are in alignment with you. Here's that word again. They're going to be in alignment when you know what's important to you. You want to think about 4 to 5 core values that influence your painting. There's a process for doing that. We'll go through it in module 5, but know what I'm talking about there. It's some things like, for me, some of mine. One is obviously landscape painting. Another is the natural world, and that encompasses things like conservation. It encompasses things like caring about wildlife. It encompasses things like national parks. So that those are values that are shared with my ideal collectors. And because we have those things in common, I can talk about them and know that it's going to be an emotional hook that's going to draw them into the conversation. And it's going to give them a pathway into the stories about my paintings that I share with them. You don't need a whole lot. It's better to not have a whole lot, just 4 to 5. It's not a mysterious process to develop those. And I'm going to walk you through it. So don't worry about that part of it yet. There are simple exercises that can get you to that spot. But that's how we find and know our ideal collector. We have shared values. We have things that we're all passionate about. And that your ideal collector will have 3 to 4 out of those 4 to 5 normally that'll make them raving fans. Then next, you want to follow 10 or more influencers in those categories, those same 4 to 5 categories, to practice social listening. Practicing social listening means that you're hanging out in places that your ideal collectors hang out, and you're listening to the conversations. You're hearing the words they use. You're hearing the kind of things that are important to them so that you can talk about those in your social media posts, in your stories. You can connect to them more. This is all about getting to know your ideal people. It's not about going and spamming the followers of those influencers. It is about becoming part of those communities. And those influencers have groups, they have Facebook pages, they have Instagram profiles. You want to join some of those Facebook groups. Again, not to spam, but to listen. You want to follow some of those profiles and pages, not to spam, but to listen. Then last, you want to contribute to those conversations. You'll be surprised how many people will actually come from one of those conversations where it's meaningful back to your profile and look at your artwork. It happens over and over and over again. So this part of it is really, really important. And again, you notice the importance of conversations. It means you have to connect, you have to comment, you have to respond. We can't be flowers who just sit and become wallpaper. We have to be part of those conversations. And the internet makes it easy for us who are introverted to do that in a way that's not threatening. If you don't know the language to respond, there are ways to come up with that. Look at role models, other artists who are already out there, who are succeeding on social media. Look at how they talk to their collectors and their followers. Do the same thing. Don't copy what they're doing, but model what they're doing. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The answers are already out there. This is the part that I really wanted to go in depth on in this lesson, even though we're going to do it again in Module 5, because I think it's an important part for you to understand about how you attract those ideal collectors. There really is a very concrete way to do it. It's not mysterious and it's not magical. It is a way that if you do X, Y, and Z, they will appear, but you got to do it all. So you may be doing some of this already. I want you to take note of that in the workbook if you are, and kudos. If you did the challenge, you've already done some of this, kudos. But let's talk about those other 5 habits that are important as well. Creating a content plan, focusing on those 4 to 5 categories that I talked about, will greatly simplify what you have to do both in writing on your blog and in creating emails and in creating social media posts. There's a system for this so that you're not trying to create 3 distinctly different pieces of content every week. You take that one and you use it in 3 different ways. So we're going to walk you through how to create your content pretty much for the next 90 days. So it'll be done. Your ideas will be down. All you'll have to do is decide, am I going to do a video? Am I going to do a photo? Or am I going to do a series of photographs? In other words, the format, not the idea of what you're going to write about. Batching is the friend of anybody who wants to spend more time painting. This is how I still have time to paint in spite of having an active online art business. The third thing is to share meaningful content to your website. So you take that plan, you write a blog post a week that goes onto your website. That becomes meaningful content because you're talking about those 4 to 5 things that your people care about. They're going to want to go to your website to check it out because you're going to link to it from social media, and you're going to send out an email that lets them know that you've created this blog post for them to go read. The website, though, is the first place that goes. Then you're going to send a weekly email that has that same content in it. The easiest thing is just to paste the blog post straight into that email. The more sophisticated way to deal with it, as you get a little bit more momentum, is to make your email an introduction to the blog post. But at the beginning, you don't have to do that. It can be exactly the same thing. You're still sending them to the blog to look at the art. And we are lucky. We've got lots of images that we can include in there. So there's lots of stuff for people to go look at. Then you're going to share meaningful content with them on social media. And again, it's going to be meaningful because it goes back to those 4 to 5 content categories that are values that they share as well. Social media, you need to post a bit more often. You should be posting at the beginning in order to gain momentum 5 times a week. You can take the weekend off, or you may take a couple of days off in the middle of the week, but you need to show up on a consistent basis. When you show up and you post 5 times a week, it tells the algorithm that you're an interesting person and it shows your stuff to more people. So you benefit by showing up consistently on a regular basis. You are feeding the algorithm. And I know people love to fuss about both Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of the social media. And I got my bones to pick with Facebook too. But the truth is, Facebook is going to benefit you. Instagram's going to benefit you, YouTube or Pinterest or any of the others, when you play by their rules, which means when you do the things that they tell you they want you to do, you'll get more followers. Your work will be seen by more people. You will benefit. Ultimately, all of those platforms are trying to create great experiences for the people who are on those platforms. So the rules and the guidelines that they have, those are there to create better customer experiences for their people who are looking at stuff on those platforms. So it benefits us in the end. So as frustrating as their rules can be, follow them. If they've got guidelines, stick to them. Play with the algorithm. Don't try to game the system. When you work with the algorithm, you will truly benefit, and you'll benefit greatly. So share that meaningful content 5 times a week on Facebook or Instagram, and you'll begin to see your follower numbers go up, as long as you remember that magic sauce at the end, which is to engage. Coming back to that one. So here's that last one. You have to respond and engage. And I want to imprint that on everybody's brain. That's the secret sauce. You can do all of those other 5 things, and if you don't do this, your following is not going to grow and people are not going to be going to your website. It's that important. It is the secret magic sauce if there's any such thing. And here's why. Most people don't do this. They do what I call drive-by posting, plop and run. They post on social media, they throw up a blog post, they send an email, and then they go do something else, and they don't engage. And when you don't engage back, the algorithm thinks you don't care. And so do your ideal collectors. And I know you do care, so you got to go back and engage. What that means is that when you're posting to social media, that you want to go back and engage with anybody who comments in those first 10 to 30 minutes when you're first starting out. Once your page gets big enough or your profile gets large enough, it's just those first 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes that'll matter the most. Then you can check back maybe once or twice during the day and answer any other comments or questions that arise. But it's crucial you do that in those first few minutes. It's also crucial that you reply to an email. When I first started out, I don't know what I was thinking, but when I would send out an email through my email system, and I was using MailChimp at the time, I was flabbergasted when people would respond. And I would think, well, now, don't they realize this is a bulk email? What are they doing hitting reply? I was so silly. I should have been hitting reply to every one of those because it would have helped build a relationship. Don't do what I did when I was silly starting out. Hit reply now and talk to people. If you're not sure what to say, again, go and look at what some of the models, the role models you've got out there have done and model their behavior. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But if you do these things, and so few other people are, you are going to be building raving fans and followers, and your ideal collectors will move from being ideal to being actual. And that isn't that what we all want? So let's go through these 6 things one last time, and then I want you to dive into the workbook. So you're going to work on identifying and knowing your ideal collector, on creating a content plan. Then you're going to share meaningful content on your website, in emails, and on social media. That's where we're going to use that platform. Then last but not least, you're going to engage. And you're going to engage with your heart. You're going to respond, you're going to reply, you're going to engage. And this is how you'll make those real, actual collectors appear. So dive on into the workbook, fill in those blanks. I want you to explore any of the things that you already might be doing in this arena, because I know some of you already have websites. Some of you already have an email list. Note that down. I want you to see where the holes are and where you're going to need to work on things over the next 90 days. Notice I did not say next week. It's over the next period of time so that you can reach that goal at the end of the 90 days. We're going to plot out when and where you're going to do those things in the last lesson in this module when we talk about your 30, 60, 90 plan. That's where we're going to map it out. So don't worry about when yet. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. Bye-bye.